Welcome to this panel on cybersecurity R&D, research and development, role of academia, industry, and government. I'm Rajiv Gopalakrishna, and I'm going to help moderate this panel. I've been working in cybersecurity since 1999 in various roles, starting with academic research during my PhD, followed by corporate R&D at Intel US, and finally in multiple startups both here and in Singapore. I currently head the industry and startups track at CySec. CySec is the Center of Excellence in Cybersecurity and is a Government of Karnataka initiative under the guidance of KITS, Department of IT, BT, and SNT, and Indian Institute of Science and KSCST. We have launched our flagship event, HACK, this year. HACK is an accelerator for cybersecurity in Karnataka. It has 3 cohorts with 21 startups participating. And today, I'm going to help moderate this session that has 3 very distinguished cybersecurity stalwarts from academia and industry. Please welcome Professor Vinod Kadapati, Professor Sandeep Shukla, and Dr. Dattatray Kulkarni. Welcome, gentlemen. I'm going to very quickly read their illustrious profiles. Professor Vinod Kadapati is an associate professor in the Department of Computer Science and Automation at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He's also an associate faculty in the Robert Bosch Center for Cyber Physical Systems. Prior to joining IISc, he was a tenured faculty member in the Department of Computer Science at Rutgers University from 2007 to 2017. He earned a PhD in computer science from University of Wisconsin-Madison in 2007 and a BTech in computer science and engineering from IIT Bombay in 2001. At IISc, he directs the computer systems security labs where they seek to build practical computer systems with sound security guarantees. His research projects have considered security issues in a broad spectrum of computer systems, from cloud platforms through web browsers to mobile devices. He has wide-ranging interests, and his projects draw on ideas and methods developed in a variety of areas, such as applied cryptography, program analysis, formal methods, machine intelligence, and hardware architecture. Vinod is also the co-chair of the technical committee at IISc, which oversees CySec. Welcome, Vinod. Professor Sandeep Shukla is a professor in the Computer Science and Engineering Department at IIT Kanpur. He obtained his BE degree from Jadavpur University in 1991, Master's and PhD from State University of New York at Albany in 1995 and 1997, respectively. He was a faculty at Virginia Tech Arlington between 2002 and 2015. He is an IEEE Fellow, ACM Distinguished Scientist, Associate Editor for ACM Transactions on Cyber Physical Systems. At IIT Kanpur, he heads the Interdisciplinary Center for Cybersecurity and Cyber Defense of Critical Infrastructure, or in short, known as C3I. C3I is India's first research center whose mission is to do research, education, training, and to spawn startups to create technological safeguards to protect critical infrastructure. Welcome, Professor Sandeep Shukla. Dr. Dattatray Kulkarni is the Consumer Chief Technologist and Senior Principal Engineer at McAfee, India. He has an undergraduate degree from NIT Karnataka, Master's from IIT Chennai, and PhD in Computer Science from University of Toronto, Canada. He has held multiple senior technology roles at IBM, Intel, and now McAfee. At McAfee, India, he drives innovation for consumer and mobile businesses and is also the India site head for building leadership and technical pipeline. His team conducts research on security and privacy aspects in consumer and mobile computing domains, IoT, cloud services, and wearables. Welcome, Dr. Dattatray Kulkarni. So, gentlemen, the panel, as we know, is about the state of cybersecurity R&D and specifically the role of academia, industry, and the government. But before we jump into the roles, I just want to step back. All of us have been working in cybersecurity for the last 2 decades or so. And all of us have both studied and worked outside India and now here in India. So do we think we have made progress? Are we better off today than we were 5 years ago? How do you assess the state of cybersecurity readiness, both among consumers and R&D specifically in enterprises here in India compared to the rest of the world? Just wanted to start off on that note before we jump into the roles. So maybe Professor Vinod, could you please share your views on that?
Yes, thank you, Rajiv, and thank you to the BTS for inviting me to be part of this panel. It's a very timely panel. So, my view on this is that although we have made forward strides, India is still not a leader as far as cybersecurity research and development goes. This is as compared to other countries that have taken leadership roles in the space, for example, the US, Israel, Germany, and China. They are leaps and bounds ahead of India. And we really need to fix this situation and try to get India into the leadership of cybersecurity. So this you can see the evidence for this in the fact that there are a lot of MNCs here. They have big development houses in India as well. I'm talking about cybersecurity RNs, but there are very few indigenous companies. And among the names that come to mind are Quick Heal. I'm sure there are others as well, but there is a relative dearth of companies that have been started here in India. And to a certain extent, we at SciSec, as you mentioned, Rajiv, the hack program, which is which SciSec is heading, a part of the goals of this mission of SciSec's hack program is to motivate and encourage more such startups so that we get up there in terms of competitiveness. In general, as a country, I think that we need more emphasis on research and development in cybersecurity, both on the offensive side as well as the defensive side. And all of this, of course, starts with the pipeline for this starts with students. And students need to really realize the importance of cybersecurity and start taking courses and develop expertise here. So today we find that there's a large number of students that actually flock to AI and ML. And not surprisingly, because these areas have made progress in leaps and bounds, but we also need students to think about.
Fantastic. Yeah. Great points, Vinod. So let's move on to see what Sandeep has to say about this aspect. Sandeep?
Well, I am probably more pessimistic about this than Vinod is. India does not have leadership in cybersecurity because from top to bottom, our cybersecurity policymakers to academia are not doing what they are supposed to do. But in terms of manpower, I think we are facing the biggest challenge because we don't have the right knowledgeable people to lead, and we don't have the right knowledgeable people to actually teach in the academia. Before maybe Vinod arrived from Rutgers to everybody used to think in India that cryptography is cybersecurity. Even at a parliamentary committee meeting where I had to give a testimony on cybersecurity state of financial infrastructure in the country, MPs were asking me, what's the difference between cybersecurity and cryptography? So, but we have made some progress since then, and there has been a number of committees, a lot of funding made available, but the leadership vacuum is still there. And one of the things that happens is that when you talk about cybersecurity, we have to have the right set of people to create courses, teach courses, and courses that are not theoretical, but more hands-on, based on real experience in cybersecurity. And we find that even the faculty manpower is extremely, lacking. And because of that, we don't produce PhDs who can actually become the manpower in the academia or in the industry, innovation and research of the future. And one of the reasons that we don't have the right incentive structure for hiring faculty in cybersecurity in India, unless somebody has personal reason to be in India, we cannot attract them to India because the way the incentive structure works compared to the US, compared to Singapore and some of the European countries, that it's not attractive for them. And there are lots of cybersecurity faculty jobs and R&D jobs in the US, which in Singapore, etc., that bringing them on board here on our faculty is next to impossible. And we are feeling that, and as long as that keeps happening, we are not going to fill the pipeline, and therefore will still always remain the second fiddle, to Israel and to US, and unless we do something about it, unless the Indian large technology houses come together and say that this is something we should do together jointly to help out, to create the right incentive structure for innovation, I think it will not be very promising. So with that note, I will say that cybersecurity research and innovation in India and state of cybersecurity of government to utilities to financial system are really in bad shape.
Okay, thanks, Sandeep. I mean, that does sound a bit alarming, and maybe rightfully so. So let's see what Kulki has to say. Maybe he has a more optimistic outlook from coming from the industry at this point. Kulki?
So Raji knows me too well. I'm an optimistic person. I do agree with what Professor Ganapati has said and what Professor Shukla has observed. They're all true things. But I believe in solving problems. I believe in building for the future. And maybe that's why I'm a academician hidden in the garb of an industry worker, right? So to say. I'll offer some data points, right? When I moved back to India 9 years ago, I came into McAfee. We, in McAfee India was considered as a development center even then, very significant on that at McAfee, but it was not considered development center of the first grade, which designs, architects new products. Fast forward now, we have half of engineering for the entire McAfee sitting right here in Bangalore. And we have, I am the chief technologist for consumer business in McAfee, which is half of the business. We sit here in Bangalore thinking about the future products, developing the technology for it, and taking them pretty much like an incubation center for the new products. Now, the thing that I want though is that that journey has been a hard journey, right? And has been a long journey. The point is that to do a deep R&D, it really takes time, it really takes patience, it takes certain deliberate steps to get there. Such as an example, that once a strategic decision has been made to develop the capabilities in India, you need to invest into building a pipeline of senior architects who can think big picture, who can think about the deep solutions one could be building. And these things happen over a period of time. And I would say that we had very humble beginnings, but fast forward, we got industry recognition for a great place to innovate. The point I'm trying to say is that while the situation is really true, I still find it very difficult to find talented engineers coming in who will be productive day one, right? But if we train them enough, we have lots of capabilities in India. We just need to lot more coordinated focus to get there. That's what I would think.
Fantastic. No, great points. I think if I were to sum up what all you have said, and maybe this comes as cybersecurity professionals, right? Because you really become skeptical over time about about the state of security, because you really know the guts of how systems work, how people interact with systems. I think it is fair to say that all of us are very cautiously optimistic. There is definitely a lot of work to be done, as Professor Shukla was saying, but there is also hope, and that's why we're all here in our places, both in academia and industry. So let's move ahead. Let's jump into. I think we have touched upon academia, industry, and government, and the state as a whole. But maybe if we start with academia, which is really where the genesis is, right, of I mean, colleges or universities are really where future cybersecurity talent come from, where leaders are born, and where ideas, right? Take anything. I mean, anything fundamental in security, be it the basic security models, the cryptography, public key cryptography. All these have genesis in universities. So academia undoubtedly plays a super critical role. Maybe, I mean, can we dive into the details? And in this case, I would like to call upon Vinod to talk about his views on the critical role that academia plays today in cybersecurity. You know?
Sure. So as far as I am concerned, the way I see the role of academia, it is a two-pronged role, and both are equally important and both should be equally emphasized. The first is research. There is research starts from the universities and works its way to industry. And so I think that in order to have an innovation pipeline, we need to, as a country, improve or emphasize the need for research and actually have research universities. Right now, if you look at the number of universities pursuing research, and that too in cybersecurity, you can count it on your fingers. The other important vertical that's required, that's where academia plays a role, is training and teaching. Both of these go in hand in hand. And if you look at where Indian academia sits today, probably 99 or 99.5% of Indian academia sits in the second bucket, which is that of training and teaching. There's very, very little research going on. So overall, I think that we need to improve this situation so that we can increase the amount of skilled manpower that's available in the industry. And this is not just giving knowledge, but also teaching the manpower that we skill to innovate at the real cutting edge of the field. So we need to increase the depth of this pipeline. Now, in order to increase the depth in research, this is a separate topic of debate of its own. It requires a change in culture in terms of how we think, an increase in the number of faculty, an increase in the size of our PhD programs, and the right incentive structure, as Professor Sandeep Shukla mentioned. But we can start taking immediate action as far as courses and teaching and mentoring are concerned. So I would say that, as Professor Sandeep Shukla rightly pointed out, if you look at the bulk of courses that are available today, there is a conflation, there is sort of a wrong illusion that security just means cryptography. And so you see that the bulk of the courses that are taught, that are available at most of the universities, that are offered, let's say, through vendors, they teach cryptography, and that too not modern cryptography. This is probably cryptography of the late 70s and the 80s, where they probably teach you how to use things like public keys, private keys, and so on. Security is much, much more than that. And in fact, there are a lot of practical skills that we need to train our people with that we don't actually have courses for. And I don't mean, really down to earth practical skills that everybody, a security engineer would use on their job, things like configuring a firewall. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about things at the conceptual level that are still practical. So to take a concrete example, this would mean something like figuring out its design, understanding the threat model, and understanding the readiness of that system with respect to the threat model, understanding the attack surface. All of these things require a certain thought process, a certain way to understand the system, and so on. And these skills are not currently being imbibed, at least in the kind of quantity that we would like to see. So one way to remedy this, of course, is to have more and more video courses that the leaders in the field can record and make available to the public for free, and sort of emphasize the need for doing these kinds of courses that are actually practical, hands-on, where you can get your hands dirty, build systems, hack into systems, and so on. Right. So that is the perspective that I have to offer, and this, as I said, is only the training and the teaching part of it. Research is a completely different ball game, and I'm not even touching upon it.
Yeah, fantastic points, Vinod. I mean, that certainly, I think, speaks volumes, coming from Indian Institute of Science, right, which is a premier research institution in India, if you will, right, and has fantastic faculty, but there's still a lot to be done. I'm just curious to see what Professor Sandeep Shukla has to say from IIT's perspective. I mean, you certainly work with a lot of, not just IIT Kanpur, but with a lot of the other premier research education institutions in India and abroad. Do you have, what are your thoughts on this, Sandeep?
One thing that we need to change in India from even school level education is the ability to think critically and express and be curious. What I find in today's toppers of JEs and all that stuff is that their main goal in life, with some exception, very minuscule exception, is to find the best, internship on their third year, and then best placement in their fourth year. And by best placement doesn't mean in terms of work, but in terms of packaging. And what is happening is that even when you teach a course with all the practical skills that you think they should have and all that, they're not that interested in that. They're more interested in making sure it's on their transcript. So even courses like NPTEL and so on, I find that a lot of students take them for the certificate, not so much for the learning. And that attitude is not going to create an innovation workforce. That will create, people would be following instructions, but they will not become innovative workforce. And that is actually a big problem. I think the attitude of students and I guess parents and this over competitive exams, preparation for exams. So getting that attitude comes from childhood. It doesn't come suddenly after coming to a top institute or college, etc. And without that, I don't think that we can have cybersecurity innovations or any innovation whatsoever. When many of these students go abroad, they suddenly see a very different environment and very different. So, for example, US universities have no placement. So students are on their own to find their placement. And for that, they have to have the right knowledge and right skills. And therefore, knowledge and skill is important than getting the things on their transcript. So I think that attitude has to go completely. Otherwise, India is never going to make an innovation economy.
I think that's a very critical point, right? A very critical argument. I mean, you're really talking about not just a shift in mindset of the students, but a cultural shift. And this ties back to the discussions we usually have about the education system in India and all the things that have been happening for the last 20, 30 years, right? So what you're saying is that system, you still see that manifested because of years of training, right? Even when they come to undergraduate or masters or PhD, that mindset still is there to get the degrees and certifications and not really sort of go after the pursuit of knowledge, right?
That's right.
So, I mean, Kulki, you're on the other end of the pipeline, right? Where you're actively going to academia. You're not only collaborating with academia, but you're also hiring to build up your technical leadership at McAfee, right? How do you see this?
It is true. Again, I have to agree with Professor Ganapati and Professor Shukla here. The incoming strength, the expertise level that we find in students is actually pretty low, right? The raw talent is there, ability to code is there, but not just definitely there is a lack of understanding of what cybersecurity field looks like. Definitely that will be is missing. It will be definitely alleviated by some of the things that Vinod was talking about, for example, right? I mean, we build these curriculums and things that are definitely a need of the hour. We definitely need more trained engineers coming in. More importantly, though, is something that Professor Shukla touched a little bit on, is that what I find missing, I have the privilege of the hindsight in the sense that as we manage incubation centers and look into the new product development, the key skill I need in engineers is ability to think big about what problems are users facing. what does protection really mean for the users or the enterprises or for the governments? What unmet needs are there? What problems need to be solved? That level of thinking about the problem is actually is a skill. It's not really inborn thing that I've experimented on. We need to develop that in students as they come in. Number one, we try to do that on the job, but it will be even better results, better outcomes if they are already ready for it. Number two is that cybersecurity has the distinction that it challenges one's ability to solve problems. You are always on the catch-up mode with respect to what bad actors are thinking. So it takes the ability to solve problems to a completely new level. So ability to solve problems in a fairly innovative way is what we need. That's a skill to be developed too, right? And it of course we do like I typical my engineers. I mean, we train them for several years to learn that skill. But imagine a curriculum developed wherein they invest into doing these things hands-on. They learn what it means to solve these problems in a differentiated way. I think that's definitely need of the hour. But I see a bigger opportunity here for the industry, right? As they call, right? I think I touched upon earlier about sustained efforts to get deep results over a period of time, right? I think all the heads of the industry in India, right, is a great news today, and that many of the best MNCs are have a presence in India, but I think MDs have a responsibility to the country, right? And they need to go and make India development centers are the place to go and build new products and evangelize as such to their management chains. And of course, the management chains won't agree to that simply because you said, please come and build a product here. You need to have programs where you develop a bench strength of people, work with academia, of course, to train things better, develop curriculums. Even if while it's developing, also have programs wherein you build new stream of architects and make it worthy for the management chain to think, aha, if I go and develop these things in India, not only that I'll get innovative solutions out, I'll also get them out much faster. So you should really make India a place to go for all the MNCs. And last but not the least is that engineers need role models. They progress much faster when they're role models. I think as development center heads in India, I think the development center heads have a responsibility to go and hire best of the best talent that is working in the US, Europe, and wherever it is, attract them to India, make them stay here and work here, and you will see some wonderful results as junior engineers watch them solve problems, watch them architect new products. Over a period of time, you'll see that we would have developed a pool of talent that is actually very, very desirable, not just for solving problems within India, actually solving problems globally. So we have a lot of job to do, but I'm optimistic that actually there's a path to it. We just have to execute on it.
Excellent points, Pinky. So yeah, I mean, if I may summarize, I think you touched upon a lot of very critical aspects again, right, from an industry perspective. In terms of what you seek from academia, students coming in should think deep, because this is cybersecurity. Everything happens at the deepest levels. You can't really have superficial knowledge and get away, right? As you may in some domains. Think deep, think big, because they shouldn't be myopic, right? They might be young and starting off, but unless you have the big picture, right, it's very hard to capture cybersecurity, right, in that sense. And I really like your aspect about the technical leadership pipeline, right, from an industry perspective, and touching upon role models, right? How if you have mentors, right, both in industry as well as in academia, then that is what really builds the talent, attracts them, retains them, and drives them to sort of the upper echelons of leadership, right? So fantastic points. I mean, curious. I mean, I just want to hear sort of the academic side, right, to your industrial perspective. To Professor Sandeep Shukla as well as Vinod, what can now that we have Kulki from McAfee, sort of. I mean, McAfee is if I may say, the premier security company, one of the oldest and stalwarts in the space. What do you think somebody like McAfee or cybersecurity industry can do better so that academia, you guys can meet somewhere in the middle? Vinod?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to echo some of the points that Dr. Kulkarni mentioned, which is that if industry leads the way, often students, as Professor Sandeep Shukla was pointing out, are motivated by placement, concrete things like placement, and this is not something that we can change overnight. It's culturally there, and so one of the things industry can do is to lead the way by actually showing that there are exciting projects going on here, the ability to grow your career in a company like McAfee, for instance, or any other security company. If there are concrete examples of this, students will also naturally gravitate towards the field. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity here for industry also to lead the way and help academia push students along in this direction. Uh, so certainly, if some of these steps that Dr. Kulkarni was mentioning are executed, I think we will see positive outcomes.
Sandeep, your views?
Yeah, I think that I completely agree. So after the placement season, all students who did masters with me with pretty concrete cybersecurity experience for almost a year and having taken many of our classes, they say that they didn't get a job in cybersecurity because nobody came to recruit for cybersecurity. They came to hire for IIT graduates, and that's the crux of it, right? So that needs to change, right? So the companies have to hire on specific domains, and cybersecurity being one of them, and then actually ask them to actually show that they actually know cybersecurity. But companies send their second year after, like, people who come to hire are often the people who were recruited last year from the same institute. They don't have the depth and knowledge that to actually even test. So they basically go by the fact that these students are IIT students. They did very well in GATE or something, and therefore they have certain quality, and we hire them. And then some of them end up doing some cybersecurity, like some of my students did. Some of them completely go into doing other things, and I think that discourages a lot of students from going too deep into any specific field and just have the right set of skills on their resume and stuff. So I think industry can actually change the way they recruit, they position their jobs. They should not just say that every year we have so many talented IIT graduates to take, but I have to fill in positions in so and so project with so and so specific requirements. And if they're doing cybersecurity, they should specifically say cybersecurity talent, and they actually should target such hiring. And that would actually make a lot of difference in terms of how they learn cybersecurity, and they actually try to really go into the depth of the subject. I think that is required.
Great points. Thank you. While we are on this topic, Kulki, do you want to counter any of those aspects? Your thoughts on how that can be? I mean, is it really a gap or a challenge, or is it a matter of scale?
I think a little bit of both. Let me offer one thing. I would agree with Professor Shukla that there's a little bit of chicken and egg here, in the sense that I do agree that the number of positions that are available in India that require deep cybersecurity skills compared to the amount of problems we want to solve are much fewer, right? So I mean, then you start asking why. The reason why it is so is because not all the multinationals that should be coming here are not here. They're not developing enough products they could be doing from India, and there are not enough indigenous companies that are trying to solve problems that are specific to India and potentially trying to export what we develop out to the, because I don't think there are some problems that are specific to us. I'm sure I've studied quite a few of them, and there are many problems that are actually common to the whole world. I think there's definitely a need to grow that demand also. But having done that though, right, I think in terms of, I think we do need to do a better job in terms of conveying to our students in the institutes two things. One is that there is a lot of growth and actually satisfaction in being a great engineer to start with. I think the joy of being a great engineer, building some outstanding products is amazing. We need to do a better job of conveying that, number one. Number two is that there is a lot of growth and opportunity in being very senior engineers. And if you continue to solve problems over a period of time, outcomes will be amazing. I think Vinod was touching on that. Just as a data point, in McAfee, and it's true for Intel also, and many companies have these senior engineering roles that are corporate level titles. And McAfee, we have something called PE, okay? And we have half of the PEs of McAfee consumer in Bangalore. That's an amazing feat. It didn't happen overnight, of course, right? It happened over years of effort, but it is possible. We need to go and convey to our students in all these academic institutes that it gets started somewhere. You will have wonderful career, and it's very satisfying to solve these complex problems in cybersecurity. It's just waiting for you to come and do it.
Just one comment here is that many of our students are not there to study engineering. Their parents told them, or is because IITs are high elite to high paying jobs, they are here, so they don't really want engineers. There are many such people.
You're absolutely right. If I may also chime in, I learned a new three-letter acronym the first time I was giving a talk to the incoming students here, which is CTC. I hadn't heard about it. That was the only question that was asked. Not what we can learn in the courses. I think this is a cultural change that's required. Rather than just worrying about what's the CTC. This joy of being a great engineer that Dr. Kulkarni mentioned. I don't know how we can imbibe it, but I think it's a very important aspect that our students need to be imbibed with.
So again, let me offer a data point, right? I mean, again, I not just because I'm an optimist, I also like to try these things and experiment and see the outcomes. So when I moved to India, I have the responsibility to go and grow the technical pipeline in the India Center as well. They said, hey, you have to do this, and you have to explain to people the importance of being a great engineer and continuing to develop career as an individual contributor. That means engineer, not a manager. I said, why do you have to do that? Don't they know already? Because I've never done that in when I was working in Santa Clara, Bay Area. And they said, no, you'll be surprised. You have to do it. And it looks like you've forgotten your Indian roots. You better go and talk to people. I started talking to people. In the beginning, it was a shocker. We have this special program for all the engineers who have aspiration to be senior technologists, technical leaders, as Rajiv was mentioning. And it was hard sell in the beginning. But you know what? Fast forward, we have arrived at a point wherein we can barely take in 50% of the nominations that come in to be a technology leader. That says that the message is hard to digest, it's hard to convey, but I think over a sustained period of effort, I think people will get it. I think it's a matter of growing as a engineering community, that this is actually what makes an engineer's day.
If I may add one more point, I think industry has a very important role to play here, because we see students only for 2 years or 4 years based upon whether they are here for a master's or a bachelor's. And of course the PhD program, but that's much, much smaller. I think this is one place where industry can actually play a leadership role, because you can actually inculcate these values once they are there with you.
I completely agree. I think we have been discussing this. I think it requires us to come up with some very creative ways of collaborating, right? I think maybe there's a call to the industry, broader call to the industry also, right? Industry should not be viewing. I'm not saying not everybody views that way. I know I'm generalizing. I apologize if I'm generalizing that. Industry should not be viewing the top institutes as simply a place to go and hire. They should actually invest their effort, their experience, their insights, so that the institute not only develops as a great research institution, but also comes up with a batch after batch of students who actually aspire to be better engineers. And that's when I think we would have created an ecosystem that is a collaborative ecosystem that actually, look, I mean, I do believe very strongly that when a small country like Israel is the go-to place for any security startup out there in the world, look, I mean, in India, I think we can create 10 Israels. It's possible. It's just that we have to put our heads together and work on it.
Great points. Thank you all. I think we've talked in breadth and depth about how industry, what is the state in academia, industry, how they can come together. But there's also the role of the government, right? So maybe we can touch upon that. And in this case, I would like to call upon Professor Sandeep Shukla, who heads the C3I Center at IIT Kanpur, which is really where all these three entities, if you will, come together, right? I mean, you can't really work in silos. We have talked about academia and industry, but with government funding, with cybersecurity, a lot of enterprise security is really driven by regulations, by policies, right? Which is all the check marks that the banking, BFSI, or other industries come into play. So, Professor Sandeep Shukla, I mean, how does that work in the case of C3I? You're looking at critical infrastructure, right? So obviously, the government is involved, and there is a lot of stake there. Maybe can you help shed some light so that these role models, if you will, can be replicated across the country and the world?
The government has certainly made available a lot of funds, but the leadership of organizations who actually provide those funds don't understand technology, engineering, or even policy. So what's happening is that we do get blessed by a lot of funds, but nobody actually listens to our suggestions, our policy suggestions, and so on, and it is decided by we don't know who. And India has a complete lack of a proper cybersecurity response policy, as well as cybersecurity for infrastructure policy. Regulations are, except for in the sector of banking and stock exchange, etc., which are under RBI and SEBI, where cybersecurity regulations are pretty strict. We don't see this regulatory bodies, especially in the critical infrastructure sector, such as power, doing their job. And that is very, very problematic. And they invite us to all those meetings, but those meetings are few and far between, and then there is no follow-up. So therefore, nothing really progresses. What we need is more involvement of industry. So we do a lot of MOUs with a lot of industries with GI, and we have been working for a while with certain companies, but a lot of companies come to do an MOU for a press release opportunity, and there is no follow-up. So that also we are seeing a lot. So we are now currently working with a number of organizations like NHAI, for example, National Highway Authority, and also with one of the hydropower corporation, and there we are seeing a little more traction these days. So we are seeing that we can help them, and they are interested to get help. But again, the problem is that they don't have the right workforce over there to actually translate what we are telling them or what we are giving them to actually make it work properly. So all that is quite problematic. Now, government is also pushing on creating a lot of startups. So one large part of the funding we recently received is for creating cybersecurity startups based on the technology that are developed here. And I find that that might be a little bit missed, because point solutions by startups are not going to make it to the market, because there are IBMs and there are FireEyes and there are McAfee's and other companies which can actually provide a more integrated solution for the enterprise and so on, which the point solutions cannot give. So unless you create the ecosystem where these point solutions can also be integrated as a whole to provide a holistic solution, and also unless the government makes it a point that they actually become at least subscriber of this technology, I don't think that just by pushing in, crores of money to create startups of the startups is going to actually help anything. So I think overall, I think the government's role is important, and thanks to them, they have made money available. But I think their vision and the strategy are not well thought out, and that might not be. So I think industry has to come and help in building the vision and strategy in creating an ecosystem of innovation. I think that just government putting in money for startups is not going to work. Industry has to actually come in and do that because they have the right vision about customers, what the customers need and what is required and so on. And also they will then can bring together those technology into an integrated solution where there will be actual takers of those solutions.
Great points. Thank you, Sandeep. Would the others like to add to that, respond to that?
So I do agree. I mean, I think that there is a lot of money, and as Professor Shukla was saying, one of the things that even we are seeing, for example, within Hack, is that a lot of these startups actually want governments to pilot their products and give them the chance to succeed. And I think that government can play a critical role there, right? I mean, change their processes, make it easy for startups to actually launch pilots inside. This gives the startups also a selling point, right? The fact that they have a real user and a very important user at that. This allows them to grow. And I think this is a very important role, in addition to just providing money, of course.
Go ahead, Kulki.
Sir, Rajiv, you started asking the question about what could government do. I thought about three things, right? One, I think in all the government initiatives, it's a great thing. I've seen it even in the last several years that I have moved back to India, and I'm really happy to be in India, happy to do whatever I can to build the bench strength here. I see that we have done a lot of digitization across the departments in the government, for example, right? But I think the end-to-end cybersecurity of the systems has to become priority for the government also. Then it will have certain domino effect in terms of what it can do to the ecosystem, whether it is established products or startups filling the gaps in those products and things like that. That's number one. It has to become a priority. Number two is that, see, one thing is to talk about a startup ecosystem. The other thing is to think about who are the entrepreneurs who are really starting them. Okay. Yes, there will be situations where 1 in 1,000 entrepreneurs are actually somebody who just finished a PhD in IISc and IIT Harvard, and they said, okay, fine, I had this great idea and I'm going to do something about it. But most of them are people who are experienced in the field. And they get experience in the field when they solve some really challenging problems. They see the user problems, they get experience to build these things. And that will happen only if things are being built in India. What I'm trying to say is that it's a long way of saying that government needs to incentivize the companies that are already here. Doesn't matter whether they're Indian companies or MNCs with development centers in India. Give them incentives to go and say, hey, if you build, we put a criteria on it. Nothing is for free, right? Government puts a criteria that if you build a product from scratch in India, for India and for global market, will incentivize you thus. I think that's a necessary thing. What will end up happening is that it will become the spring of a lot of innovation in the country, right? And somebody will get experience doing that. Once the architects, technology leaders build a couple of these things, they get experienced, they will go out there and solve other problems in the country, right? That's second thing. The third thing is, I think, in the process of, I'm really proud to say that, we did MOUs with IISc and IIT Harvard. The process of doing that actually was learning experience to me, right? It took quite a bit of time, despite motivation, energy of professors like Ganpati, right? And Professor Prasanna in IIT Harvard. they have to go through a lot of processes to get these things signed. I think government has a role in this, giving the institutes the freedom to come up with some innovative ways of collaborating with the industry, right? Whatever is the industry. For example, all of the professors to go and spend the summer in the industry so that they get to see the problems firsthand. They get to see what are the industry relevant problems that we could be solving. I guarantee that when they go back to the institute, they will have a new way of looking into the research problems that they are actually solving, right? So we should not be limiting ourselves to just hiring and internships, but we should be thinking about some innovative ways of doing these things. Why can't we create these virtual development centers that sit in the institutes but actually solve problems for the industry? Why can't we make it easier for the industry to go and say, hey, all you have to do is bring a problem and we'll provide you the best of the best solutions out there. I think there is an opportunity for the government to make it easier for the institutes. Of course, institutes also have to become a lot more dynamic in solving these problems, get involved a lot more with the industry, but there's a lot more to do there. But I'm glad to see some beginnings of that, but I guarantee there is a lot more we could do together.
So one data point I'd like to mention here is that DARPA, for example, they actually allow companies to and academics to come together in writing the proposals. So similarly, I have worked with the Air Force research AFOSR or ONR or the Office of the Secretary of Defense. I have worked with companies together to write proposals and then work with the company to deliver the final product. So I think that ecosystem has to be there. There is no such ecosystem here because DST will not fund the company is part of the proposal, right? So I think that also needs to change.
Great points. I think, all very valid points coming from you all having gone through the journey, right, as opposed to as a third person. So fantastic points. So I think we have covered a lot of ground. We have identified many challenges, which I think comes with the years of expertise as well as experience. But I think as of your point out, we've also been very cautiously optimistic, right? There is a lot of optimism in terms of, yes, these are the challenges, but in terms of going ahead, these are what we see as roadblocks, and these are the ways that others have solved it. So there's no fundamental reason, at least, why we can't overcome these barriers, if you will, right? So I think we have talked about a lot of things, but and we're also running out of time. So if I may ask you to sort of summarize, if you have three things on your wish list, right? What would those be? I mean, obviously, in terms of moving the bar, raising the bar, moving the needle on cybersecurity R&D in India, in your various roles, interacting with the government, industry, or academia, what would those three, maybe one-liners be, right? So that there are concrete takeaways for the audience. Let's start with maybe Professor Sandeep Shukla.
I think that the top level cybersecurity policymaker architecture should be taken from either technologists who have proven record of innovation and managing innovation, and or academics who have similar records. That can make a huge difference. Second thing I think is that you need something like a DARPA or similar kind of organization which will bring industry and academics together to solve mission specific problems. And the third thing I would say is that industry also has to come together, create consortium to actually create funding and innovation ecosystem with academia, which actually they should not worry too much about the IP rights for all those things, because in many cases while doing these MOUs, these IP rights things in the way a lot. So because there are things like that happening in the US all the time, that IP is completely shared between all the companies that are involved, no exclusive licensing, etc. But actually, it helps the creating the innovation ecosystem. So instead of having this immediate, are you immediate product out of this where you will have exclusive IP? You should actually fund innovations, and then eventually you will get an ecosystem where you can actually do individual exclusive kind of research. Right now, that is very difficult to do. So I think these would be my wish list for the future.
So, Sir Vinod Ganapati?
Sure. Three concrete things. Well, what I would want is that more practical system security courses are to be offered, right? I mean, and the only way that this can happen in a scalable fashion is if we follow a hierarchical model where, those that have the expertise train the others and it keeps going on this way. So we need to do this, offer a lot more of these practical courses. The second, which is a related point, is that we should change the education culture in the sense that, because of the very nature of the field of cybersecurity, which involves a lot of experimenting, which involves a lot of system building, analyzing systems, breaking things, students should not be afraid to experiment and build. They, in fact, should test, break things, and so on. The third point, which is also related to the points that I mentioned above, is that government and industry need to reward such innovation that involves working with real software, breaking things, and so on. So, for example, one of the things that industry can do is that when they go in for campus placement or actually hire people, they should not just look at their GPA or overall performance in courses, but actually see if the student has built something interesting. This may have hurt their GPA in the process of doing things, but maybe they have built something. Maybe they have contributed to an open source software. So all of these are important and valuable skills that that industry, for example, can incentivize. And if the student body sees that this kind of activities are being rewarded, the word will spread, and more people will start doing this. So those are three things that I have to offer.
Great. Dr. Dattatreya Kulkarni?
Yeah, so I mean, I am, as you will know by now, I'm optimistic and practical. I wish every single development center in India, whether doesn't matter whether it's an indigenous company or a multinational, cybersecurity or not, right? Every one of them, MDs out there, they take a goal that there is at least one product or solution that is released every year that is built in India from scratch. I think that will be an amazing feat. In 3 years, doing like that, it will do some wonderful things to the ecosystem, right? I think the expertise that we develop will be unmatched. That from the government point of view, I think government has an opportunity, especially given that we are doing digitization. Pick one department and build design it in such a fashion, integrate end-to-end security in such a fashion that it is actually world class. That's given as an example to the other departments, right? And the wish I have for the academia is that I think it would be great if you find one or two programs which take the collaboration that we do to beyond what we do today, right? I would say, for example, it should become almost like a habit for the faculty to find a summer in an industry partner. Moment they spend a couple of summers there, their research will be a lot more outcome focused. I also see an industry side of this coin that the industries have to take the opportunity to start developing virtual development centers in academics. Why can't they let, we're all working from home already. We know what it means to work from home. Why can't we remotely manage a small development center, doesn't matter how small it is, development center that sits in the institute so that the students and the professors, they think day in and day out about outcome focused, deep problems to be solved. Why limit it only to the point when students come for an internship or faculty comes for a seminar? I think that would be wonderful things to do.
Great points. So thank you all. I think we are out of time. So this has been a great discussion, and it sounds like we're all mostly aligned on what works and what doesn't, and we all mostly agree on the challenges and definitely the opportunities. So it looks like there's a lot of work ahead. to be done in this space. And I think the key word in this case is collaboration, right? Academia, industry, government. I mean, these are the three pillars, and there's no reason why they should be working in silos. So there's a lot of synergies that need to be explored, right, and practically addressed. And there's no reason why that's not possible. So with that, I would like to thank you all for your time and definitely for your deep insights on this topic. So we'll stop here for any questions and answers. Thank you.